Hello and welcome to Foreigndesk on Benue television. I'm Susan Ayo. The headlines: Court upholds Nicolas Maduro's election as president of Venezuela. Nepal lifts ban on TikTok. Plus, volcano erupts in the southwest Iceland. Now the news in details. Venezuela's highest court has upheld the re-election of Nicolas Maduro as president following accusations of widespread voter fraud in July's poll. The decision by the Supreme Tribunal of Justice (CSJ) comes as the United Nations warned that the court lacked independence and impartiality. The CSJ said it is revealed material from the country's election authority, which said Maduro had won just over half of the vote and agreed he had been victorious. Announcing the court ruling, CSJ head Carlos Rodrigo said that the electoral material assessed by certified objectively and the result of the presidential election of July 28 released by the National Electoral Council (CNE), where Nicolas Maduro was elected president of the republic, are validated. Chairperson of the fact-finding mission organized by the United Nations Human Rights Council, Marta Velinas, said that the government had exerted undue influence over TSG decision through the use of direct messages to judges and public statements. Maduro has led the country since 2013, and his re-election means he can serve another 6-year term. Canada's government has intervened to end a shutdown of freight rail services that had raised fears of supply chain chaos across North America. Labour Minister Steve McKinnon said that the freight rail operations could resume within days after he asked the Canada Industrial Relations Board to oversee binding arbitration between the country's two major railroads and their labour unions. In a statement, McKinnon said that the government will do everything in its power to preserve the stability and certainty that the nation's railways and economy are well known for. Recall that Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Canals City Lake locked out more than 9,000 unionist employees after management failed to agree on a new contract with the Teamster Canada Rail Conference Union before a midnight deadline. Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Canals City said they would resume services following McKinnon's announcement without specifying a timeline. In a statement, Canadian National Railway said it is satisfied that the labour conflict has ended and that it can get back to its role of powering the economy. But the company is disappointed that a negotiated deal could not be achieved at the bargaining table despite its best efforts. According to analysts, the 17-hour shutdown of freight services, which also disrupted the thousands of commuters in Toronto, Montreal and Vancouver, had threatened to inflict serious damage to the Canadian economy and upend supply chains linking Canada, the United States and Mexico. About half of Canadian exports are transported through rail, with freight services carrying goods worth $279 billion in 2022. The United Nations Committee responsible for combating racism has slammed the United Kingdom over continuing hate speech and xenophobic incidents following riots fueled by the hate and misinformation that gripped the country this summer. The UN Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, CERD, said on Friday it was concerned by the presence of racist speech on various platforms, particularly where perpetrated by the politicians and public figures. The committee also issued the findings on Belarus, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and Venezuela, after reviewing them to its latest session. CERD said that in a statement that it was particularly concerned about recurring racist acts and violence against ethnic and ethno-religious minorities, migrants, refugees and asylum seekers by extremists, far-right and white supremacist individuals and groups, including the violence that took place in July and August. Riots and unrest fueled by xenophobia and misinformation surrounding the tragic killing of 3 girls in a stabbing incident swept across the country in more than a week of violence that saw about 600 people arrested. Protests by far-right groups escalated into the clashes with police in multiple towns, which saw hotels housing asylum seekers torched and mosques Glad you're still there. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived Kyiv, where he will meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. This marks the first time an Indian Prime Minister will visit the country since it gained independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Modi is expected to discuss economic ties and cooperation in defense, science and technology, while also seeking to discuss an end to war with Russia. According to observers, it is not clear whether the Indian leader could be an effective deal-maker, seen by many in Ukraine as being too close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The visit comes at a crucial junction in the war after Ukrainian forces mounted a lightning offensive on Russia's Kursk region on August 6, while Russian troops continue to make advances in Ukraine's east. On Friday, the Ukrainian Air Force said 14 of 16 Russian attack drones had been destroyed overnight. Modi's meeting with Zelensky comes a month and a half after he was in Moscow for talks with Putin, a visit that coincided with Russian missile strike on Ukraine that hit a children's hospital. The Indian leader implicitly criticized during the bilateral summit. Modi and Putin agreed to increase bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030, increasing investments, eliminating non-tariff trade barriers, and using national currencies to circumvent sanctions. The meeting elicited fierce criticism from Zelensky, who said it was a huge disappointment and a devastating blow to peace efforts. India is the world's largest buyer of Russian arms and has sought to capitalize on cheaper Russian oil as the United States and European countries seek to limit Russian energy sector's access to the global marketplace through sanctions. It has avoided explicit condemnation of Russia's 2022 invasion and has abstained on the United Nations resolutions that criticize Russia, instead urging both sides to resolve their differences through direct dialogue. Floodwaters have inundated parts of India and Bangladesh, stranding hundreds of thousands of people in India's northeast and neighboring Bangladesh's eastern region. According to local authorities on Friday, the death toll in Bangladesh, which is still recovering from weeks of political turmoil, had risen to 13. The Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief said 4.5 million people were affected by the flood in eastern Bangladesh. The footage showed army personnel manning the rescue craft, while cars and buses were marooned in streets of knee-deep water. The authorities have opened 450 relief camps in Tripura, where about 1.7 million people have been affected, along with extensive damage to infrastructure, crops and livestock. Travel and communications were severed between the capital, Dhaka, and the southeastern parts of the city, Chittagong, as part of a major highway, were underwater. The annual monsoon rains in South Asia regularly cause significant destruction, but climate change is altering weather patterns and increasing the frequency of extreme weather events. While both neighbors have been affected by the floods, many Bangladeshis blamed India, saying it opened a river dam in Tripura, causing sudden floods in Bangladesh. India's Ministry of External Affairs denied that in a statement, saying the dam is far from the border and that India had been the heaviest rain of this year. Officials say that Tripura State's main river, Gamti, was flowing above the danger mark through the district of Kumilia in Bangladesh to empty into the Bay of Bengal. India and Bangladesh were 54 common rivers that flow from the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal. Pakistani authorities said gunmen armed with rocket-propelled grenades ambushed a police convoy in the nation's eastern Punjab province, killing at least 11 officers and injuring 7. No one has taken responsibility for the attack in the Rahim Yar Khan district, Karachi town. The officers were ambushed while on patrol in a deserted area in the search of robbers who operated in the region. Police said that the gunmen were likely robbers and not members of an armed group. Security forces often carry out operations against bandits in Punjab and Sindh province in the south, who hide in rural, frustrated areas and sometimes carry out kidnapping to make money through ransoms. Police said one of the vehicles broke down while passing through accumulated rainwater alongside farm fields when dozens of bandits launched the attack, one of the deadliest of its kind in recent years. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif released a statement calling for immediate and effective action against those responsible. Pakistan has witnessed a surge in attacks by armed groups in recent years, but such a high number of police casualties in a single attack is rare. Earlier, gunmen opened fire on a school van in Punjab, killing 2 children and injuring 6 people. No one claimed responsibility for that attack. A local police officer told newsmen that the attack appeared to target the driver of the bus and the motive was likely one of the enmity. Pakistan's government has struggled for decades to subdue armed groups that operate in a number of provinces throughout the country. Some are criminal organizations, while others, such as Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, also known as Pakistan Taliban, with the aim of ousting the government. Let's take another break. Please stay with us. Glad to have you back on Foreign Desk. France President Emmanuel Macron on Friday met left-wing leaders at the start of 2 days of talk aimed at deciding who will form the country's next government. Recall that snap elections in early July left French politics in deadlock, with no party able to form a clear majority in the National Assembly. A caretaker government led France during the Paris Olympics to the anger of a left-wing alliance that toppled the poll. Their four-party New Popular Front wants a little-known senior civil servant, Lucien Castet, to be named Prime Minister. However, the 37-year-old economist is unselected and seen as the unlikely presidential pick for Prime Minister. Under France's political system, the president appoints a prime minister who can command a majority in the National Assembly. In recent years, that prime minister has come from the same party as the president because they are elected within a few weeks to each other. But after Macron stunned France in June by calling a snap two-round parliamentary vote, his centrist Ensemble alliance came runner-up behind the leftists. Nepal has lifted its ban on TikTok less than a year after blocking the Chinese-owned application out of its stated concern for social harmony. Minister for Communication and Information Technology Subhao Gurung announced the decision following a cabinet meeting. The move comes after Prime Minister Shamal Oli, who was sworn in last month after the collapse of the previous coalition government, issued the directives calling for equal treatment of all social networking platforms. According to reports, the decision was made after TikTok, owned by Beijing-based ByteDance, communicated with the Nepalese government in recent weeks, assuring that it will not abide by all legal requirements, promote digital safety, and establish a designated channel for content-related requests from authorities. The previous government of Prime Minister Kamal Dahal banned the app in November, citing the spread of content that disturb social harmony and disrupt family structure and social relations. Experts say that TikTok, one of the world's most popular social media platforms with more than 1 billion monthly users, have been slapped with restrictions in dozens of countries amid concerns about its efforts on young people and alleged national security risks. Nepal's neighbor, India, banned the app in 2020, along with dozens of other Chinese-developed apps following violent skirmishes along the Indian-China border. Earlier this month, the United States Department of Justice sued TikTok for allegedly violating legislation that requires platforms to obtain parental consent to collect the personal information of users under 13 years. A volcano in southwestern Iceland was erupted for the 6th time since December. According to country's meteorological office, the eruption started at 9:26 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time on Thursday, with live videos images showing red lava spewing out of the new fissure on the Jens Peninsula. The Icelandic Meteorological Office said that the total length of the fissure was about 3.9 kilometers and had extended by 1.5 kilometers in about 40 minutes. Iceland's Ministry for Foreign Affairs said that the eruption did not present a threat to life and that the nearby area had been evacuated. Regional Police Chief Alfa Ludvigos told newsmen that the evacuation of the nearby fishing village of Grindavik was going well, noting that 22 or 23 houses were currently occupied. Most of Grindavik's 4,000 residents had evacuated in November, prior to an eruption in December, and while residents have since been allowed to return to between eruptions, only a few have opted to stay overnight. Iceland's national airport and air navigation service provider Isavia said in a statement that flights to and fro from the country were operating normally despite the ongoing eruption. The eruption shows the challenge faced by the Iceland nation of nearly 400,000 people, as scientists warn that the Giants Peninsula could face repeated outbreaks for decades or even centuries. Since 2021, there have been 9 eruptions on the peninsula, 6 occurring since December, following the reactivation of the geological system that had been dormant for 800 years. With that, reports have come to the end of our bulletin this afternoon. Before we go, a recap of the top stories. Court has upheld Nicolas Maduro's election as president of Venezuela. Nepal has lifted ban on TikTok. Volcano has erupted in southwest Iceland. Thanks for being part of Foreigndesk on Benue Television. I am Susan Ayo. Remain blessed.